A millionaire fell for a homeless girl. She vanished, then returned to stun him. The rain hammered the shining panes of the Beacon Room, one of the city's most guarded dining rooms, turning the streetlights outside into smeared streaks of gold. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of aged Cabernet, butter-seared ribeyes, and the quiet chatter of people who bought entire companies with a nod. Ethan Caldwell, a 32-year-old tech magnate, tugged at the cuff of his custom suit and stepped away from his table. The night had been stuffed with hollow banter, thin laughter, and clinking glasses raised of victories that didn't move him. Outside was another world, raw, unsanded, real. As his driver eased the sedan to the curb, Ethan started toward the sleek black door, then froze. A small figure was curled near the stone archway, pressed against the building to escape the downpour. He slowed. The city taught him not to stare hardship, but this girl didn't fit the usual picture. Her clothes were worn, but not filthy. Her posture, though tired, held a hint of grace. When she glanced up, just for a heartbeat, he caught something in her eyes that tightened his chest. A battle between pride and need, both refusing to surrender. Ethan frowned. She didn't look like someone who had given up. She looked like someone who had lost everything and still wouldn't break. Ignoring the curious looks from departing patrons, he stepped closer. "Do you need help?" The girl stiffened. She studied him carefully, bracing as if waiting to be mocked or waved away. "I'm fine," she said, voice small but edged, tugging her coat tighter. He didn't buy it. She was soaked through, shivering, hands clamped to the fabric like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "You don't look fine," he said, voice even. She turned her face aside, dark hair plastered to her cheeks. "I don't need your pity." Ethan's brow lifted. Pride. Stubbornness. Most people would have reached for his hand, without thinking. She was different, and that difference both annoyed and intrigued him. "It's not a pity," he replied. "It's an observation and an offer." She met his gaze at last, eyes bright with exhaustion and defiance. For a moment, he thought she might consider it. Then she turned and took a step, then another. Her knees buckled. He moved without thinking, catching her before she hit the ground. She was light, trembling from cold and hunger, her breaths thin, her fingers snagging his sleeve in pure reflex. Something in Ethan stirred, an emotion he hadn't felt in too long, real concern. He looked down at her pale face and knew walking away wasn't an option. "Miss," he said, giving her shoulder a careful shake. She groaned faintly but didn't push him off. His jaw set. He could do what so many others had done and passed by, or he could do something that didn't come naturally to him at all. Care. The choice took no time. He glanced at his driver. Nearest hotel. Now. When the door swung open, he lifted the girl into his arms and carried her out of the storm, not realizing that choice would alter both their lives. The first thing Lily felt when she opened her eyes was warmth. For weeks she had slept in the bite of wind, on damp concrete, with bones aching from unforgiving stone. Now she sank into something soft. Sunlight spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, glancing off a crystal light fixture and silk bedding. Her breath hitched. Where was she? She bolted upright, heart racing. As the door opened, Ethan Caldwell stood there, as composed as a magazine cover, a breakfast tray balanced in his hands. "Morning," he said smoothly. "Sleep all right." Lily went rigid. Hotel suite. His face. The rain. Collapsing. Arms lifting her. She needed to leave. Now. "Why am I here?" The edge in her voice was sharper than she meant. He set the tray on the bedside table. "You passed out," he said simply. "I wasn't leaving you in that storm." She glanced at the coffee, the pastries, the perfect eggs. Wealth clung to everything about him, and that made her wary. "I don't need charity," she said, pushing the blanket away. He raised an eyebrow. "I didn't say you did." She swung her legs to the floor and noticed her clothes, her same ones, clean and neatly folded. He hadn't taken advantage, hadn't taken her dignity. Still, she wouldn't relax. "Thank you," she said, standing. "But I should go." He leaned against the dresser, arms crossed. "You're free to leave," he said easily. "Before you do, I'd like to know something." She paused. "Who are you?" His eyes searched hers. A breath caught in her chest. He didn't ask where she slept or why she was on the street. He asked who she was, as if he knew she wasn't what she seemed. Lily tried to laugh it off. I think you already figured that out. No, he said, studying her. A typical homeless girl wouldn't carry herself like you do. He stepped closer, voice low. Last night, you knew the wine list by smell, and you quoted Shakespeare in your sleep. I talk in my sleep, she blurted. His mouth tipped. Apparently, heat climbed her cheeks. She had spent months fading into background, working to be unremarkable, yet this stranger had seen through her in hours. She grabbed her jacket. I should go. His expression tightened. Let me help you, Lily. She stilled. He hadn't asked her name. Somehow, he already knew it. Their eyes locked. For the first time in forever, she felt seen, and it scared her. She turned the handle. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Caldwell, she said, voice quiet but steady. But I don't want to owe anyone. She didn't look back as she stepped into the hall, but she felt his gaze like a hand at her spine, promising this wasn't over. Ethan had everything, money, reach, respect. Yet for weeks after, he thought only about the girl who had nothing. Lily had vanished. Slipping back into the city seems like she'd never been there. He tried shelters, drove unfamiliar blocks at midnight, even hired a private investigator. Nothing. The silence got under his skin. Why did he care? Why couldn't he let it go? He knew the answer. She had been different, and that difference had shifted something inside him. Fate stepped in on an ordinary evening. Ethan ducked into a narrow coffee shop hidden between two towers. He saw her the moment he crossed the threshold. Behind the counter, hair twisted into a loose bun, a dusting of flour on her cheek, tying an apron knot with determined fingers. Lily. His heartbeat tripped. He stood still a second, just watching. She looked tired but steady, overwhelmed yet upright, still carrying that unshakable poise. He moved to the counter. Black coffee. She froze at the sound of his voice. Slowly, she looked up. Their eyes met, and the room thinned to a single line between them. She blinked. You. Me, he said, faint smile tugging one corner of his mouth. She stared for a long beat, as if choosing between flight and the truth, then turned, grabbed a cup, and poured. You've been avoiding me, he said lightly. I wasn't avoiding you, she said, keeping her tone cool. I was moving on. And yet, he said, tilting his head, here I am. She slid the cup to him. $3. He set a single crisp 100 on the counter. She deadpanned. Hilarious. He took the cup. Keep the change. She rolled her eyes, but as he walked to a table, he felt her gaze stick to his shoulders. That was enough for now. He came back the next day, and the next. At first, she kept a careful distance, took his order, handed over the cup, kept her eyes elsewhere. Ethan, however, had patience and a dry streak of humor that wore down corners. He asked about her day, teased about her latte art, praised a new playlist. A sliver at a time, she softened. One afternoon, as she passed him his coffee, she sighed. Why do you keep coming here, Ethan? Best cup in town, he said. She gave him a look. That told him to try again. He leaned in a fraction. Because I like talking to you. For once, she didn't have a quick retort. She stared at the lid, biting her lip, and he knew something had shifted. Over the next weeks, they stopped pretending the conversation ended at the counter. He walked her home after closing, choosing longer routes through small parks and lamplit streets. They talked about mistakes, about hopes, about the things success can't fix and poverty can't erase. He learned she loved poetry, that once she had wanted to write. She learned that behind his polished veneer lived a man who felt trapped by the very empire he built. One evening on a park bench, he asked, "Why did you run that night?" She exhaled, "Because people like you don't belong with people like me." He frowned. "What kind of person am I?" She met his eyes, fear and something tender flickering there. "The kind who could break someone like me without trying." His chest tightened. "Lily, I would never hurt you." For the first time, she let herself believe him. And for the first time in years, she felt something she had buried. Hope. Ethan didn't think of himself as sentimental. He preferred numbers, plans, outcomes. But since Lily walked into his life, nothing felt neat. He'd spent weeks earning her trust, carefully taking down the walls she had built. Just when he sensed they were finally stepping into the same light, she disappeared. He pushed open the cafe door, expecting her smirk behind the machine, only to find another barista at the register. "Where's Lily?" he asked as casually as he could. The girl glanced up. "She quit." The floor tilted. "What?" "Couple days ago," she said, shrugging. "No notice. Just left." His mind raced. Things had been good. She'd been safer, warmer, almost happy. Why vanish? He told himself she needed space. Or time. Or something he couldn't see. Days passed. Then a week. 2. Nothing. He checked shelters again, watched corners and bus stops. Hire another investigator, the kind who found hidden fortunes overseas. No trace. It made him furious, and it hurt. He sat in his penthouse, staring out at the grid of lights, a glass of whiskey sweating on the table. The city felt empty. Lily had been the first person in years to make him feel anything he couldn't buy. She had challenged him, made him laugh, made him want more than deals and headlines. Now she was gone, a ghost he couldn't hold. For the first time in his life, a man who could acquire almost anything realized he had lost something he couldn't replace. A year slid by. 12 months, 52 weeks, 365 days, and her name still rose uninvited in his mind. He buried himself in work, closed enormous contracts, stretched his companies across new markets. Nothing filled the shape she left behind. One afternoon, flipping through a business magazine without reading, he went still. A photograph from a charity gala, chandeliers, tuxedos, national figures. And there, in the middle of them, stood Lily. Only she wasn't Lily from the street. She wore a deep emerald gown, hair swept into a graceful knot, a bright, effortless smile lighting her face. She looked like she belonged there, like she always had. He scanned the caption and felt his pulse hammer. Lily Hart. No, Lily Hart was gone. The line read, "Lillian Hartwell, daughter of the late industrialist Gregory Hartwell, makes a rare appearance at the Hartwell Foundation Gala." The room tilted again. Lillian Hartwell, heiress, old money family with a name etched into buildings. She hadn't just survived the streets. She had walked away from marble floors. She had hidden an entire identity from him. The sting surprised him with its heat. He closed the magazine sharply, jaw clenched. She had let him believe she had nothing, when an estate waited behind some iron gate. Why live on sidewalks when she had been born into rooms like these? What had she been running from? There was one way to know. He called his assistant. "Everything on Lillian Hartwell," he said, "and get me into the next Hartwell Foundation event." If she thought she could vanish from his life, she misjudged him. He wanted answers, and he would get them. The Hartwell Gala glittered like wealth made visible. The ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Waiters slipped between conversations with silver trays, and polite laughter floated above strings. Ethan had attended 1,000 rooms like this, but tonight there was only one focus. He saw her almost at once, standing by a marble column, wearing a sapphire gown that moved like water. Hair loose now, falling in soft waves. Not Lily from the doorway. Not Lily from the coffee shop. Lillian Hartwell, society's daughter. Yet when their eyes met across the space, something familiar flickered through her calm. The streetlight girl who had rolled her eyes at his arrogance and laughed with him on cold benches. Her lips parted. He drew a breath and crossed to her. She didn't have time to step away before he stood in front of her, gaze steady. "So," he said quietly, "you weren't just a girl in the rain after all." Her breath caught. She had dreaded this moment and expected it. Yet the impact still rattled her bones. "Were you going to tell me?" he asked, voice tight with hurt, not anger. "Or was I supposed to think you blew away like smoke?" She swallowed. "Ethan, You told me you had nothing," he said, a harsh laugh escaping. "You refused help like it was poison. The whole time, you had a life waiting behind a gate." She exhaled shakily. "It wasn't my life anymore." He frowned. "What does that even mean?" She stared at the polished floor. I left because I didn't belong here, because this world felt hollow. He searched her face for lies and found none. You ran. She nodded. I didn't want a life handed to me that meant nothing. I wanted to know who I was without the money, without the expectations. Even if that meant starting over on a sidewalk. His chest eased, understanding sliding into place. It explained the poise, the references, the firm refusal to bend. She hadn't just lost everything. She'd given up to find herself. He dragged a hand through his hair. Damn it, Lillian. Her eyes shone. I never meant to hurt you. He shook his head. You didn't. You just confused me. A small, sad smile curved her mouth. It confused me, too. The party hummed around them, but they stood alone in the pause between then and now. He stepped closer, voice softer. I don't care where you come from. I don't care if you have $1 billion or a bus pass. I care about you, the woman who challenged me and made me laugh and showed me there's more to life than balance sheets. A tear slipped down her cheek. He brushed it away with his thumb. Do you still think we don't belong together? She gave a breathy laugh, hand finding his. You're the only thing that's ever felt like it fits. For the first time in too long, she let herself choose love without fear. No more disguises. No more hiding. No more running. Days became weeks, and weeks turned to months, and what they had deepened into something steady. Ethan, who once treated problems like equations, found himself choosing coffee on a quiet morning with her over any meeting. Lillian, who once flinched at the thought of gilded cages, learned that love wasn't about money. It was about trust. They traveled side streets and sea towns, learned each other's tells, argued and made up over takeout, and stole kisses in elevator doorways. The distance between their worlds burned away because they were building a new one together. One night, under a wide sky, Ethan decided. He planned every detail. A rooftop garden washed in string lights, a small table under stars that felt close enough to touch, dinner ending with her favorite tart. Lillian, unaware, laughed at his last joke and reached for her glass, eyes warm in candlelight. He could barely hear his own punchline. His heart pounded too loudly. This woman, stubborn, brilliant, impossible, had rebuilt his life, and he didn't want another day without her. He stood. She blinked, confused, as he went to one knee. Her hands flew to her mouth. Lillian, he said, voice calm though his chest thudded. The first time I saw you, I didn't know your story. I only knew I wouldn't forget your eyes. Hers brimmed. You showed me what matters. You made the noise quiet. He drew out a small velvet box, opening it to a simple, timeless diamond, graceful as her. All I want is you. A soft laugh broke through her tears. Ethan, marry me, he said. Be my always. For a second, no words came. Then she nodded fast, breathless. Yes, yes, Ethan. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him before he could stand, holding him like she'd never let go. He buried his face in her hair and felt the world fall into place. Sun poured like honey the day they married, gilding the gardens at the Caldwell estate. Every flower, every ribbon, every detail had been planned. But nothing was as stunning as the woman walking toward him. Ethan stood at the altar and forgot to breathe. Lillian moved in lace and silk, hair flowing, eyes bright with joy he'd never seen shine so fiercely. She had always been beautiful. Today, she was his, and that made her the most beautiful woman in the world. Guests rose in a hush as she came down the aisle toward the man who had once been a stranger, then a surprise, then her safe place. With each step, memories flickered. The storm, the first coffee, late walks through parks, the ache of leaving, the relief of being found. At the altar, he took her hands, his grip gentle but sure. The officiant spoke, but she heard only the thundering of her own heart and felt only his thumb stroking her skin, a silent vow. Do, Ethan Caldwell, take Lillian Hartwell to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and honor her all your days? I do, he answered without a breath of doubt, the words carrying everything he'd learned to feel. And do you, Lillian Hartwell, Take Ethan Caldwell to be your husband, to stand beside him from this day forward? She looked into his eyes, and every fear she had ever known went quiet. I do. The moment they were pronounced, cheers rose. But Ethan didn't wait. He pulled her in and kissed her like the years had been leading to this one second. She melted into him, laughter mixing with tears as applause swelled. When they parted, grinning and breathless, he whispered against her lips, "Forever, Mrs. Caldwell." Her heart swelled at the name. "Forever," she whispered back. As the reception sang on, music, clinking glasses, bright talk, they slipped away to the terrace where warm light spilled across the stone. Ethan laced their fingers. "Ready," he murmured. She leaned into him, steady as sunrise. "I've never been more ready." Together they stepped forward, leaving behind the pieces of old lives and walking into a future stitched with love and laughter, and the promise that whatever came, they would choose each other. In the bright afternoon, hand in hand, there wasn't a billionaire and a runaway anymore, just two souls who found their way back. Their story became a quiet proof that no matter where you start, no matter how lost you feel, love will find its path. They had faced secrets, struggle, and distance, and still their bond held. Because love doesn't measure bank counts or last names. It measures a choice to stand side by side, again and again. If this story touched you, tap like, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to Drammy X Stories for more moving journeys. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss the next story that might make your day brighter. Thanks for watching, and remember, the most unforgettable love stories often begin in the most unlikely places.